organization or as a sustained member of our organization. The YMCA like it's our business. And I guess my here to meet the needs of all those in our community, the scholarships that we offer, the Y is always looking for this support. We hope that all of you will at one time think that we have. I've been rushing my talk because we put out a number of brochures.
Whatever is consistent with your schedule. I'm sure they're friends.
He is a sole practitioner in Stone Mountain and was his dad, as we all know, has been around Decatur for a long time. He's a graduate of Woodrow Wilson Law.
The political orientation that Phil and I have, he and I were usually on the other side of the issues with his shoe. He had gotten the idea from Mr. Khrushchev, I believe, who had visited the United Nations a few weeks earlier, so if he could go with the crowd. He always exercises his own judgment. He thinks on the Republican ticket, candidate for the nomination as Republican. Phil?
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you kindly. Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ben, President Marvin, members and friends of the Decatur DeKalb Bar Association. Any of the rules. Shouting matches from members on both sides of the committee, and I always was dismayed because oftentimes high school students would be beyond that. It was an authorization, and I planned to vote against the appropriation, so we did. And what I would like to conserve is a liberal Jeffersonian tradition. Now, I was brought up in the Northland, and yet I find that I have more common denominators philosophically when I get down south than I do in even many areas of my home state. Although there are a surprising number of folks still in Illinois who harbor the good judgment of recognizing the infinite wisdom of the Founding Fathers when they created a system of government that was designed to make government the servant, not the master. And while Jefferson held that that was a self-evident truth, that we are created by God Almighty and as such endowed with those inalienable rights, and that government is a man-made institution to make us more secure in the possession of that divine inheritance, the truth of the matter is that wasn't a self-evident truth. Certainly wasn't to the overwhelming majority of people in the world. It wasn't even a self-evident truth to a majority of the people at that time in the 13 colonies. They came to understand the process to make us more secure in the possession of that divine inheritance. Now, that in turn liberated all of the creative talents that made us, remarkably enough, the most productive people the world. The federal government is intruding into every aspect of our lives. It's even invading the classrooms in local school districts, something that I never thought government, at the national level at least, had any responsibility for doing. And it is in the process of even invading family relationships. And to the extent that's so, it is certainly not demonstrating the wisdom that Jefferson called for. And when it comes to frugality, the year I was born, 1930, our national debt was under $16 billion. What kind of a legacy we've passed on to this oncoming generation? One of the things my dad taught us as kids is that we had a stewardship responsibility, and we didn't understand exactly what that meant, but he said, boys, it means that when you're 70, you should be able to look back over your life and say that you put more into it than you took out of it. And if that's stewardship, then I can say that the leadership of our nation for the past half-century has really been bankrupt in its stewardship responsibilities to those who come after we do, and the unborn generations yet of the next century. A decline in our defense capability that began about 1970. In fact, there was that much forethought that went into that. Well, we passed so much of that kind of legislation, and of course, it's a blizzard of forms he's got to fill out, and fighting the OSHA inspector and EPA and FDA, you name it. And I've got a couple of choice quotes you're going to love, Ben. Ed Koch, one of our former colleagues. And so in the Washington Post, an article recently by Dick Reeves is entitled says Washington just sits there and tells us to do equally in the schools. It's crazy. It never ends. But Ed interrupted his counsel, Alan Schwartz. You voted for all those things in Congress. I know that continued. You think that was just, you know, some off-guarded statement? The Boston Globe, I tore this out of 2 days ago, and here's what to do without. He talks about the mandated millstones. And he says, as a member now at the simplicity of congressional solutions, behavior I could never atone enough, he told a group of fellow mayors. But at any rate, I remember going into his office one time, ranting and raving about our society. He said about liberal friends. He said that we have a 13.5% rate of inflation, highest in years of the major industrial nations of the world. We've run 3 world record-setting trade deficits in a row. We have the highest financing debt. And to illustrate it graphically for you, to show what it's done to that dollar, between 1949 and 1969, we cut the value of that piece of paper in half. Now, with that halving went a halving of pensions, insurance, and savings. And between 1969 and 1979, we cut the value of that piece of paper in half again. And the economists are now predicting it won't even take 5 more years at this rate to cut in half the value of that piece of paper again. Well, you can see where the trend lines are heading. And anyone who does not derive instructive lessons from past experience is a person who, as Santayana observed, is condemned to relive history. And we're going to have to do it. But it is avoidable still. And I think the thing for all of us to keep in mind is that if you knew that, like a ball headed for the pavement, that it hit the pavement today and it started its upward trend tomorrow, it doesn't have to make more than an imperceptible change so long as the trend line and the momentum we know is headed in the right direction. Because if it takes us the next 200 years with integrity to pay off that debt, so be it. At least we know that tomorrow will be better than today, and next year will be better than this year. And we'll know that by the end of this century, our youngsters will be moving into an era of prosperity and abundance undreamed of in our lives.
Take 1. Crane and Finch may be miles apart politically, but they are in the same boat in their attempts to get to the White House. Both are paddling upstream. Because if their criticism is correct, that too many people now are looking at the polls and the momentum rather than the issues, then these 2 candidates may not have a chance. From Decatur, Ernie Bjorkman, Action News. Can I try that one more time? Huh? Take 2. Crane and Finch may be politically apart. Take 3. Crane and Finch may be miles apart politically, but they are in the same boat in their... Gosh, sorry, I got it in. Take 4. Crane and Finch may be miles apart politically, but they are in the same boat in their attempts to get to the White House, because both are paddling... Take 5. Crane and Finch may be miles apart politically, but they are in the same boat in their attempts to get to the White House. Both are paddling upstream. Because if their criticism is correct, that too many people now are looking at polls and momentum rather than the issues, then these 2 candidates may...